All right. Thank you. We'll get started now. I want to say thank you for taking the time to join us today as we walk through how you can provide secure access to your applications without losing visibility. Now, first, I would just want to quickly go over some housekeeping items. For our agenda, we'll first walk through the challenges that we commonly see around application access, and then we'll focus on two key use cases before we walk through exactly how Menlo Security can help your organization. I really encourage everyone to stay for the demo where you'll actually get to see the product work in action. But throughout the presentation, if you have any questions or comments, please add them in the question box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. We also have Kara, who's in the backstage, who'll be adding relevant content in the box at the bottom of the screen. So if you want additional information, you're curious to learn more, you have additional content. And I just want to introduce your speakers. You have myself, Nagin, and alongside myself, we have Ritu and Roz. And if you're wondering who is Menlo Security, we are a pioneer of browser security. Browsers have become the most widely used, yet the most attacked enterprise application today. We know that they are absolutely essential for users, yet they continue to remain a security blind spot. But there's good news. Menlo has been delivering true browser security and protection for over 10 years now. And this has really enabled us to know how threat actors think. We know how threat actors are using evasive techniques to evade the traditional security controls that organizations have in place. And we know just how to protect against these threats. Now, for the challenges around secure access to applications, I don't want to spend too much time here. These challenges are most likely already very familiar to everyone, but enterprises have been trying to provide secure access almost as long as there have been applications. First, they tried, virtual desktop infrastructure, and then virtual private network access, and most recently, zero trust network access. And then, a story we're all very familiar with, digital transformation, everything moved to the cloud, and applications became browser-based. I know speaking for myself, the majority of applications that I access, I do so through the browser. So in the modern enterprise, if users don't need a corporate device and they don't need to be on your network, it really begs the question, if modern access does not require network access, why are legacy solutions still binding them together? And the challenges with legacy approaches, it could really be condensed down to four key areas. First, there's limited security controls. This can be surrounding specific, access to specific resources and apps, but also there's a lack of granular data security controls. And why is this important? It could really lead to increased risk of unauthorized access, lateral movement, data breaches, and even compliance issues. And then second, we have these legacy approaches, and they're actually really complicated and time-consuming for our users. They even can have limited flexibility. If you have a user who needs to access your resources from different locations or maybe even different devices. And overall, there's latency and scalability issues. So what we're seeing is, user frustration, reduction in productivity, security fatigue, and even shadow IT. And then another frequent pain I hear is that our current access methods have just become a management nightmare. And with the rise of BYOD, it's added this new layer of complexity. And then lastly, it's this lack of visibility. Once a user or device is within the network, there's often really limited visibility into activity. So I've seen organizations struggle to gain the insight that they really need into what users are actually doing with their access. So right now, you might know that they've accessed the server, but not which files they've accessed or modified. And so this actually makes it very hard for you to detect a malicious or, most likely a negligent insider or even a compromised account. Now, how can we look at our current use cases and find a way to address the challenges that we've walked through? And I want to focus on two critical use cases that I'm seeing with organizations. First, we'll examine how we can provide secure access from unmanaged devices. I'll also include the, complexities of third-party access, and then we'll explore exactly how we can transform legacy access. Now for BYOD, I've read that 82% of organizations have some sort of BYOD program. And it wasn't shocking to me. It can really help save companies money and significantly reduce IT overhead. But at the same time, we have to be able to address the security concerns. And these concerns, they're mainly centered around the deployment friction. When it's an unmanaged device, you have limited control over, personal devices. So it's hard to enforce anything. So they might not be updated regularly, making them potentially vulnerable. It's also difficult to separate personal and corporate data on these devices. And I know it's not easy, it's not an easy task. It can be really challenging to address these concerns because you might have a wide variety of devices or different operating systems. So it's difficult to really implement consistent security policies. And then when it comes to third-party access, the challenges are pretty similar. It's hard to know how secure a contractor or partner systems and practices truly are. And similar to BYOD, there's data security concerns. And I think especially with third-party access, to have secure and efficient onboarding and offboarding is critical, but I know it can sometimes be complex when you also have to make sure that there's appropriate access levels when they need it. And then throughout these two use cases, a common challenge is the lack of visibility. And this is because browser traffic has historically been invisible to the majority of security tools. And the lack of visibility into and control over unmanaged devices, it makes it really difficult, really virtually impossible to detect suspicious browser behavior or take measures to prevent a problem before it happens. So what should organizations do? What should you look for in a solution to help enable these use cases, but in a secure way? I think one, for me, what I've seen most importantly is you want to reduce the friction that these legacy access approaches require to secure these devices. Instead of technology that requires an agent, you want to look for a clientless deployment, but a clientless deployment that also doesn't require significant changes. This can really greatly reduce resources that are needed from security and IT teams because, there's no changes to DNS records, there's no need to import certificates, no agent is required. And I think more importantly, you remove that friction from end users who potentially don't want to have an agent on their personal device, or even those who just don't want to install and learn a new browser. And then in addition to the, context-aware and granular access controls that really help prevent lateral movement, you want a solution that provides separation between the device and the application. This network separation is so important for application security. And third, you really want visibility into how the user is accessing the application. And it's really essential to ensure that these controls are working properly. Security teams, they need to be able to see what the user did during the browsing session. And historically, as I've mentioned, this has been an issue with other solutions that provide access to enterprise applications. I know Ritu, you frequently actually work with organizations around these use cases. So are there any kind of learnings from your conversations that you want to share with the audience?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Nagin. So as Nagin said, we have been talking to various customers who are on this journey where they want to provide access to their contractors or their employees on their BYOD devices. Actually, I met a couple of customers who pay their users money to use their own devices. So because it takes a lot of effort for them to ship those devices to those users and then to manage those, right? So there's cost of the laptop, the cost of shipping, and then to make sure that endpoint is up to date with everything the enterprise want that endpoint to have. So the enterprises are trying to move away from that strategy, and but they still need to give access to those users. And they also want to make sure when that access is given, first of all, that access is minimum, right? So if the customer or if that end user needs to access that one application because they are they are part of that call center, which is for some customer service, that's the only application they need to see where the users have placed the orders and if they can help with that. So they don't get access to anything else. And even when they're giving the access, they want to make sure that access is minimum on that application. Maybe that application has social security information, which is not relevant to that end user, that call center guy who just need to check the record number and then give information about their order itself and fix that problem. The other thing is like the visibility into what they are doing. So like I was talking to a customer, and again, they have a lot of these call centers, which they set up for their customers. So they have multiple of those. They were all the users, but they still are seeing the usage of data leakage where these people who are hired to work as the call center guys are selling the information outside. So they want to minimize the information which is shared with those users and also how to protect that information which is shared. So things like watermarking is very important for them, and like data redaction, which is, and then what the user is doing on that application. So the minimum, so basically provide the access, provide minimum access, have the visibility and secure your data, what you have is what the customers are looking forward to. Same thing for like customers who are usually like when they're acquiring companies. Like I was talking to a customer who uses VDI for their current solution to provide access to their applications. But then when they acquired this new company, scaling the VDI to that new company's level is very, very expensive. It's expensive, it's time consuming. They have did some mathematics where they reached to the number of servers they need, the amount of memory, CPUs, and now they are onboarding these 1,000 employees, and that cost is astronomical. And especially given that how VMware is charging these days, how Citrix is getting acquired, and all of those is just adding to the cost and the time and management a lot. So they're looking for solutions where they onboard those users quickly and without adding a lot of work for the admin and still make sure that access is secure and visible. So those are the few use cases I've been hearing, and they are looking for these kind of solutions. Again,
Thank you. And
back to you.
that, thank you. Yeah, and that last example really helps transition to our next use case. I've already discussed what felt like in length the challenges of these legacy approaches. So we need to find a way to upgrade these legacy access methods to better reflect the applications and the users that they serve. So like systems like VPNs and VDI, they both reflect a time when, the majority of applications and even users were located in the enterprise network. If you have VDI deployment, you're more than familiar with the challenges, performance, high cost, complexity, poor user experience. And if it's not properly implemented and managed, there's also security concerns there as well. And then if you have VPNs, you're familiar with the performance bottlenecks, the complicated configuration and management, and also the security vulnerabilities. So how do we upgrade our legacy access methods? What should organizations look for in a solution? And it's really important to, as Ritu mentioned, look for a solution that provides that minimum access required. And also that it doesn't require all these components that can lead to a complicated infrastructure, which in turn leads to a high cost and poor performance. Especially when applications are browser-based, does it make sense to have these complicated and costly methods, when a simpler solution that provides greater security is available? Ritu, I don't know if you want to add anything from kind of your conversations with customers here.
Yeah, so actually, and again, I did touch on that already. So VDI is where we are seeing a lot of pain these days, especially with VMware's of like trying to increase the cost, trying to sell Horizon, and Citrix getting acquired by Vista and changing their licensing cost and structure. So cost is the one big factor which is playing in users or customers trying to find a solution which can replace their VDI. The another is like, even if you spend so much money, give access to your end users, you did everything right. You figured out what you need to give access to those applications to those users. The experience is still bad. It takes a lot of bandwidth to access those applications which are hosted on VDI. So a user needs to have a really, really good connectivity to access those applications. So they spend money, they are over what's the term, over providing the resources, but the users are still suffering, which is the main goal. The main goal is to give access to those users and have them work efficiently. And when the cost is going up so much, they are thinking on into alternate solutions. And the same thing is for VPN. So VPN was a solution which worked for almost 2 decades. It was amazing when few of the users were working outside, right? Like I'm sure all of you remember when we all used to go to work every day. And then maybe like I used to work from home and my kid was sick or they had a day off or something, right? But they were rare occurrences. Maybe 90% of the workforce was at work all the time. And this 10% or even smaller slice of the employees were working from home. And VPN worked well, right? Because that's what they bought for, they scaled well. But when COVID hit and all of us moved home, those VPNs were not scaling up to that the pressure which was put on those VPN gateways. So a lot of enterprises in that time frame, what they did is they made their applications public. And I don't think that's a good idea. Nobody would agree with that. But that was the need of the hour. Those users had to work. And there are VPN vulnerabilities. The VPN gives access to the whole network. We have seen the uses, incidents of lateral movement. So the companies and the enterprises are looking for the solutions, as I said before, which can give access because the user needs the access to work efficiently, be secure, and not have such a big uh, bill to them and an admin management headache. Back to you,
Yeah,
Nikki.
thank you. And now what hopefully is the most exciting part, we'll walk through how Menlo Security, provides that solution that organizations need to have secure access to applications, but also that much needed visibility that's missing with legacy approaches. Now, with Menlo Secure Application Access, it offers a zero trust aligned solution that prioritizes security while enabling access to enterprise apps for employees and partners. Menlo can deliver that fastest path to zero trust by helping security and IT teams set up secure access to web apps in minutes. There's no significant infrastructure changes or agents. Employees, partners, and guests, they can all work anywhere without interruption, and they do so through a familiar browser, a browser they already know and love, or an extension. Now, in a zero trust environment, every access request undergoes really strict verification. And Menlo adheres to zero trust principles by examining each request before granting least privileged access to the specific apps a user needs. And this really helps minimize the attack surface and ensures that your users have only the permissions that are required for their tasks. And then to provide even further protection, Menlo Secure Application Access can safeguard your mission critical apps and data with the Menlo Secure Cloud Browser. And the Secure Cloud Browser, it acts as a protective layer between your web apps and the local browser. So the solution can shield your users from content-based attacks and protect your application from malicious requests. So even if an endpoint is compromised, a threat actor cannot directly access or issue requests to the server. All the application requests originate in the Menlo Secure Cloud Browser, not the potentially vulnerable endpoint browser. And as you can see, this Menlo Secure Cloud Browser is invisible to the end user. And so all these robust protections are delivered without disrupting any user workflows. And then we also have last mile data controls, which really ensure sensitive data doesn't reach, vulnerable endpoints or unauthorized users. And these controls include copy paste controls, watermarking for web apps and file downloads, data redaction, DLP for uploads and downloads, and built-in and custom DLP dictionaries. And now for that needed visibility into app access and user actions, I'll hand it over to Roz.
Thanks, Nagin. I'm also joined by my partner in crime, Jamie Lawson, who's sitting quietly in the background. I like to put this in when we're talking about browsing forensics, because when I first saw it, it was very exciting. And my first question was, where is it getting the traffic? Well, it gets it from the Secure Cloud Browser. And as you can see, what's derived from there allows you to see exactly what the user is doing during the session. And we'll talk in a second about what that means. Next. So if you're in a SOC team or on a security or an IT team, you know this problem. Your applications are accessible via browser, super. But what's going on in there? It's always been a black box on the security side. So you can get some visibility from your SWG or from transaction logs, and then you can look at the endpoint and see what happened there. But the in-between has always required guesswork, and it's always had significant ambiguity around it. Now, with browsing forensics, no longer so. Next. So, browsing forensics, and these are actual screenshots on the right, will allow you to log application access. You decide what gets recorded. It's logged, but you decide whether or not there are forensic records available. When we say deep visibility of user actions, that's best shown in the right when we're looking at the forensics viewer. I like to say it makes getting forensic information as easy as watching a video. Just press play, which, as you can see, is right down there. This will give you a look, screenshot by screenshot. You watch it, it kind of looks like a movie. Down at the bottom of that film strip sort of thing, you can see what a user input. If you want to do some more looking on the left side, there's actually an area you can click to see what the user input, if anything. And the next thing down there is the resources. Now, browsing forensics also has a very strong play with our Protect and Heat Shield products. So the page resources are really most useful in those use cases, but they're here should you need them. On the left side, the forensics timeline gives you a complete at-a-glance look at user interactions. So you can drill down really quickly if you see a reason to do that. So what does that mean? If you need to prove that you are compliant with regulation, or say the line of business wants to have protections in place, now you have actual proof. You don't have to go to the user and try to ask them about their actions or wait until something goes wrong. You can actually see it. You can also target what you're recording and monitoring by user, by group, by application, and more. And that's what you do with secure application access. But if, for example, you have a user on a watch list and all of a sudden they're going to your Salesforce and downloading a bunch of things, you can get actual evidence that that occurred, and secure application access can be configured to make it so that they can't do any harm to the application itself. Next. This information is confidential and private. Menlo's a security company, and we're keenly aware of the type of sensitive data that these recordings can reveal. For that reason, the captures, we don't keep them, we don't look at them. They are immediately ported to your storage location of your choice. And that's specifically because of the security implications that involves. Jamie, anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great summary, Roz. And the experience that we've had with several of our customers is that this significantly reduces the time it takes for the SOC teams and the IR teams to investigate issues. And obviously, with the integrations that we have with other SIEMs and other platforms, you can embed this into other existing workflows. But
Yeah.
Great job, thank you.
Makes things easier. Nagin, next. And by the way, viewers, stay tuned because the demo is really where this all comes home. So stay with us. Zero trust without sacrificing security or usability. A noble goal. I say, let's do it. I'm going to go clockwise around this hexagon because that's just how I roll. So when we're looking at the overall solution, the benefits include true zero-touch deployment. You can set up these controls as an admin without the need to touch every single endpoint, change DNS records, God forbid, move certificates around. It's that easy. Secure cloud browsing refers to our secure cloud browser, which sits between the endpoint and the application. That isolation gives you amazing security from internal attacks, malicious endpoints, vulnerable browsers, all the kinds of things that you could envision could be an issue, particularly in unmanaged third-party cases. Last mile data protection. This is great stuff. First of all, the data never reaches the endpoint itself, so it's not going to go to unauthorized users. But also, you can restrict copy, paste, upload, download. You can watermark your application sites so that it's immediately evident to a user. This is internal. I should be careful with stuff here. We can also redact data, as Ritu mentioned earlier, and this is all part of secure application access, which is great. The user experience will feel seamless to your people because they're used to accessing applications in the browser. This is just going to feel like another day at work to them. Nothing new to learn and nothing new for you to deploy. Now, on the security side, incident responders finally have information about where problems have begun before they blossom. Now, with secure application access, you can be looking at things like DLP issues or threat or exposure. Obviously, on the security side, with our Protect suite, you can be looking at where phishing attacks got access that later turned into ransomware on the back end. Finally, rounding us up towards 1150, I guess here, clear visibility into user actions. Can't overstate that enough. The amount of time that security and IT teams have to spend putting together clues and talking to people only to come up with guesswork at the end and ambiguity. Browsing forensics ends all of that. You don't need to wonder what they did because you can see it. Jamie, anything to add here?
You've done great. Thank you.
All righty. I say we move on to demos. Ritu, take it away.
So let's see. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the portal which Menlo provides, which has the list of applications or thumbnails of application you give your users access to. So for Menlo, usually we need VPN to access our service portal, Confluence, Jira, Bitbucket, ChatGPT I just added here because I wanted to test something, but now I'm not running VPN and I will show that I can access these applications without going through the VPN and without doing anything. But I also want to show, as Nagin mentioned, and I think Ross did too, if there is something running on that machine, that won't be able to access your applications, which are hosted in your network and are accessed through Menlo Secure Application Access. So if I do the ping, this is an application which we host in our AWS, and it has a conditional access. So I'm not able to reach it. So anything which is running on this machine, if it tries to go directly and access it, it won't be able to do that. Even if that user goes to the browser and tries to do it directly, or something malicious running on this, it would be the same result. They won't be, you see my typing? So it won't reach to anything because this is not available. But I can access it from here. So that's the one thing, which is what we are talking about, is providing the access, but providing the security of your application, of your data. So anything running on your machine can't access the data, and also an application, and also it's not able to modify things. If you guys remember, and it has been in news for like few years, like Log4j attack, where somebody was adding a user agent header with a Jindy. That kind of attacks won't work because Menlo's browser is running in the cloud, which is the interface between the browser, which is here, and the application itself. So even if you install a plugin on the browser doesn't have access to add those headers to that application. So that's just the security part. Now to the access part and the DLP. So as you can see, it has a watermark. So this provides the security against those users who unintentionally or intentionally would share the critical information with competition, other guys, other relatives who they shouldn't be sharing information with, or maybe someone you've hired and he's about to leave and he's like, okay, let me get all the information about the customer so that I can use it for my next job. Just seeing their name all over it would stop that user from leaking the information. It's like a hindrance. The other thing is, in today's day and age, I don't think I know anybody who's above 13 and do not own a cell phone. So even if you provide controls like screenshot, I can always take a picture with my phone. But if watermark is there, it's hinders that user from taking the picture of the privileged information because their name and the time and stamp all is there. And if it's shared, it can get backtracked to that user easily. So the other thing I just wanted to show is like we have DLP for uploads and downloads. So uploads in the when you are accessing your application is more for the compliance. So if you have rules where you don't want users to upload things which are against the company's policy, you can create that. In the world of a swig on internet, that was more of all the users are in the company and they are trying to send something outside, so you would create policies. Menlo does the same thing for downloads. So if you have a download, it'll get blocked and the end user won't be able to download that document or that file. So again, it's up to the customer or up to you guys what kind of access you want to give. You can completely block download for that user, or you can give the download access, but not able to download with the documents which have certain information. So the other thing which I wanted to show is the data redaction. Actually, let me just stay here. Oh, this is the page which should not be working. So that's the demo. So suppose I go back and I just go to some random ticket. Sorry, Jamie, I think it's your ticket, not random. But I want to. Do you see the block? I don't see the block. It's okay, let's move on. So the other thing I want to show is the data redaction part of it. So there is this application which we have created and hosted on internet. So I'll show you what happens when you try to access directly. So it had SSN and they are redacted. So we can create custom redaction for your end users. So if I show you this application directly, it has the SSN, right? So here it is redacted, watermarked, and then you can create policies, whatever you want on that application. Now to the browsing forensics. So I just want to show a recording, which I did before, because sometimes the demos you would see something else. So this is what Ross was mentioning, that it takes the guesswork out what the user was doing. So it's when I was on this app, this ticket, I was searching for something, then I entered something because of which I got blocked. So if I go back here and I check, then I can see that the end user tried to enter this comment, and that's why he got blocked. So again, it depends upon your policies, but the DVR like view would display everything that user was doing. So if again, we start from here, so here the user input this, then the user tried to input something in the comment section and got blocked. Jamie, do you want to add anything here?
I think the other piece, maybe a little less relevant to the secure section, is if you go to one of those sessions.
This one? Which one do you want?
Doesn't matter, just anyone. Oh. And you go to the thing that looks like a document list in the tabs. Mm-hmm. We also capture all the resources of the pages. So for investigations that require a deeper analysis of the page structure and the contents, we capture all the resources, resource requests backwards and forwards between the pages. So you can go and look for common trends or threats that you may be researching. Mainly from a protect perspective, but also like if there were vulnerabilities or issues in your private application, you may be able to also do some diagnostics using this tool. But great demo, Ritu. Thank you. So maybe back to you, Nagin.
Yes, so thank you. And now we'll just go to the Q&A section. As I'm walking through the different questions, a poll will actually pop up. So please, answer that poll. We want to make sure we're able to answer everyone's questions and you found the information useful. Now, we got a few questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can. First, I think this was answered in the presentation, but nice reminder. Will users know that they're being recorded? Their actions are being recorded?
Maybe I'll take this one, Roz.
Yeah, that would be good because I actually didn't address this in the presentation.
So yes, we have an option within the administration of browsing forensics to highlight whether users are being recorded or not. It's a configurable option. There are a number of actually interesting reasons why you might want to promote that the user is being recorded. There may be regulatory requirements that require that, but the second piece is also it can act as a deterrent. So it may make people think twice before they do an action if they know that browsing session is being captured for training purposes or whatever the reference point is. But and Nagin, to summarize, yes, it is an optional feature that we have as part of the browsing forensics capability.
Okay, nice. Second question, what do you mean DLP controls are applied in the cloud? And I think, Ritu, this question is for you.
Okay, so because as I said, we sit between the application and the end user browser. The interface which is happening is like all of the data which gets applied policy on is in the cloud browser. So the data doesn't reach the endpoint when we are doing redaction or we are doing any kind of copy paste control. This is all like DLP. If we have like a DLP for download block, it's not that the file reaches the browser first and then it gets blocked. All of that happens in the cloud browser and the user doesn't get to see that data at all. It never makes to that endpoint. It's not in like memory anywhere. So if there is a sophisticated hacker and trying to figure out the data, that is not possible because it's not reaching the endpoint at all.
Thank you. I think this question is also for you. Do you only support browser-based applications?
So no, we do support non-browser-based applications too. Browser-based application is where you would be able to provide access without doing anything on the endpoint at all. For non-browser-based application, we do have a client which would provide the access. Again, it's the same zero trust access, you would say, similar to what we have shown in the portal. You would see that on the client side. And it also gives you the additional posture control. So you can have the minimum posture set for that user, saying the operating system, or antivirus, or firewall, and then only the user can access that application you have given access to. And also we support geo-based policies. So if you have compliance or like you have a partner who should be accessing some application only from a specific IP address or a geo, then you can configure that. And like if you are, suppose in Singapore, we see that from our APAC custom, like users in Australia, they don't want to send their data or access data outside at all. So you can create the policy where the user gets to access the application only based upon the geo. And actually that's true for both browser and non-browser applications, again, just to not have the confusion.
I think a follow-up question to your answer actually came about. Can you configure it to be able to manage access to internal resources? For example, allowing external users access to RDP servers.
Yes. So we can configure the client to access the applications which are hosted in your private network, your private clouds, GCP, AWS, or Azure. We have this, I think, again, you showed that in your architecture, but probably didn't go over it. We have this very lightweight app connector, which make an inside-out IPsec tunnel to Menlo, and that completes the path. So from user to Menlo to your networks, to your data center. And again, the same is still true. We don't do DNS. DNS would still happen in your network. So, and you don't need to import any search. It's true for a browser-based application as well as the other application. So yes, we do support RDP, SSH, and any kind of those protocols which are initiated by client, and they can access those applications.
Okay, perfect. And then Jamie or Roz, what SIM tools does Browsing Forensics integrate with?
Take this one as well, excuse me. So we have a number of integrations available. We publish a Splunk technical add-on in Splunk base. That's an integrated application as part of that Splunk suite. We also have a CrowdStrike connector. And we've also developed a little Python application that is very easily manipulated or modified to integrate with many other different SIEMs, be that Microsoft or Paolo or whoever else, other SIEMs that you may have, IBM and so forth. So there's a number of different integrations that we have available.
That's perfect. We'll just get through one more question since we're getting over 45 minutes now. Ritu, I think this was also another follow-up. How are CAC or PIV cards accommodated to allow a user to log into apps?
So when you're using a client, we are not interfering with the traffic. So if your applications need the CAC or any hardware devices for logging in, the authentication remains the same. So even if your applications are authenticating with something which is in your data center, maybe it's set to authenticate with the Active Directory, which is ancient and still running in your data center, we are not interfering in that path. We just provision, like we facilitate the connection between the client and server. And after that, it's if the server can reach whatever it needs to reach, if the client can reach whatever it needs to reach, the authentication will happen. Although for browser-based application, we are still doing the research to support CAC. Like we do support MFA, where you can enter your like Okta verify kind of a code, but the CAC we need to look into for browser-based applications.
Thank you. I actually changed my mind. Another question came in, and I think it's a nice question to end on. Jamie, how does Browsing Forensics actually help with compliance?
Well, that's a great one. I mean, I think it depends a little bit on the use cases that it's being applied to, but maybe we can use a couple. So, for example, we have it's a slightly odd use case, but we have a healthcare customer that requires that all employees go through a certain level of training each year, specifically around HIPAA. And what they were finding was that even though that training had minimum amount of time on the slides, they were finding that the users were actually doing emails and other things whilst they were meant to be going through the training. So from an auditor perspective, they wanted a way to prove that the users were actually going through the training, paying attention to the training and completing it per the requirements of the auditor. And so they actually captured those sessions to prove that the company was going through the necessary compliance procedures. Another use case that we've had is as contractors are restricted in terms of the applications they're able to access, it's a mandatory requirement in certain industries to be able to prove that the users aren't going laterally through the network to other applications that they haven't been given, or theoretically haven't been given permission to access. So by setting up Browsing Forensics to capture all the sessions associated with contractors, you can see exactly which applications they're accessing and then, you know, all the details that Ritu showed, what they're doing within those applications, if they're doing anything that's nefarious or inappropriate and so forth. But from a compliance perspective, you're able to prove exactly which applications they're accessing and which they're not. So just a couple of use cases. There are a few others that we could go through, but I think those give a flavor of the capabilities.
Yeah, great answer and question to end on. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. If you want to learn more, there'll be a follow-up email to look out for, and would love to continue the conversation in whichever direction you're curious in. You might actually have Ritu or Jamie on your call, but again, thank you for joining us today.